I'm Cody Stoots. Welcome into the channel. The top 11 players on the Texans roster right now. We're going to go through it. Why is each player in the spot that they're in? I'll explain on the video. And if you have a disagreement, hit the comment section down below. And on your way to the comment section, throw me a thumbs up, subscribe to the video, and check out Houston Football, www.houfootball.com, where I do all my writing about the Houston Texans and where you'll find this top 11 list as well. Oh, and don't forget to visit our fun friends over at Underdog Fantasy. First-time depositors using my code STOOTS, S-T-O-O-T-S, are going to get double their first deposit. There's a link in the description down below to check them out. Without further ado, let's get into the top 11 Texans on the roster right now. So this is a fun exercise to go through to figure out where these guys are right now, how this changes over the course of the season. We'll do this again at the end of the season and look back at what changes occurred and what players went up, what players went down, what players jumped onto the list, and inevitably what players fell off the list as well. And the way that I determined this was a sliding scale of how important is their position, how important are they to the team, how talented they are right now, how well they played in the preseason, and to an extent, the expectations that we have for those players over the course of this season. Let's get to it. Number 11 on this list, cornerback Steven Nelson. Nelson was probably not going to be this guy if I had done this list before training camp got going. The offseason hubbub that Steven Nelson had, where he didn't look like he was in favor of the way the organization was going. He didn't like the vest that Nick Caserio was wearing, and ultimately the team comes together with Nelson. They fixed the contract issue. They fixed that with a little bit of extra incentive and extra bonuses for this upcoming year of Nelson's contract. So he makes a little bit more money. He seems to be happier, and he played really well in the preseason. He's probably been as good on a regular basis as what his best was last year, and he's going to fit in nicely opposite Derek Stingley at that cornerback spot. He's a veteran. You can rely on him. He's been through some tough times in his NFL career, and now he's here to help this Texans team go to the next level at the cornerback spot. Nelson makes the list. He fins off any of the honorable mentions that we would have, like Denzel Perryman, Christian Harris, some of the other players on this team. Nelson slides in there at 11. I would expect that he hovers around this number over the course of the season, and if there's somebody that maybe gets supplanted because someone else plays really well, Nelson would be that guy, not because I don't think he's a good player and will have a good season. I do. I just feel like there are players that are going to skyrocket and impress more than they have to this point, and that may take Nelson off the back end of this list. From Steven Nelson at 11 to number 10, where we find defensive tackle Malik Collins. Collins is playing the best football of his career. He's a really good player right now. His pass rush win rate, that's hard to say that 10 times fast. His pass rush win rate as a defensive tackle last year was second only to Chris Jones. Yeah, that's right. The Kansas City Chiefs star defensive tackle. Malik Collins was number 2 in pass rush win rate. Now he's got a running mate, a defensive tackle in Sheldon Rankins. That should increase how effective Collins himself is. And you just look at where Collins was. A disappointing year with the Raiders in 2020. He ends up with the Houston Texans on a 1-year deal. He plays well enough to get the extension, and then he plays well enough again last year to get another extension. So Nick Caserio has given Malik Collins 3 contracts in 2 years, and they've been well-deserved. He's a calming force along the defensive line. He seems to be a fantastic locker room guy, and I encourage you, if you haven't checked it out, the Houston Texans did a feature on Collins over the summer with some of the places where he works out and some of the people that he works out with. It is a feature that is worth your time. It's about 20, 25 minutes on the Texans YouTube page. Check it out. Malik Collins makes this list, and he's a veteran, been around a couple of different teams at this point, and just has a steadying level to his play. Again, similar with Steven Nelson, I could see some players playing better than Collins this year, finding themselves ahead of him on this list. But ultimately, Malik Collins playing the best football of his career from the defensive tackle spot, and maybe being even better than he was last year. It's an exciting spot to be in for the Houston Texans, and certainly for Malik Collins as he checks in at number 10. Number 9 is a player who may not play in week 1 of the NFL season and might even have a extended absence into the week 2 setup with the Indianapolis Colts, but it's Titus Howard. Titus Howard is one of the most talented players on this team, and he's certainly one of the most compensated players on this team with the new contract extension that he got right as the preseason was getting going, right as training camp was getting going. Howard's coming off his best year as a player in the NFL. He played right tackle. He played it really well, and he's had some moments over the course of his career before last season where he looked good. You think back to a couple of years ago where he and TJ Watt went at it and Howard had a bunch of success against Watt, and those two will square off again in week 4 when the Pittsburgh Steelers come to town. But Titus Howard took those small moments, those irregular moments, and turned it into a season-long performance from him at the right tackle spot. I don't love negotiating with players coming off of their best season, but if Nick Caserio is betting that that's the Titus Howard you're going to get every year going forward, or maybe even an improvement in that level, that's something that is pretty exciting about the future of Titus Howard and where he fits into this team. Look, if he and Laremy Tunsil can create bookends for the duration, for most of this season and the duration of this season, that gives you a nice, really solid floor to what this offensive line can do. You figure out those 3 spots in between the 2 bookend tackles, and you might be headed in the right direction as an offensive line. But Howard, he's been really good. Let's hope that he has stretches of fantastic play this season as soon as he's healthy, as soon as that hand injury heals up, and Titus Howard is back on the field. From the offensive line to another member of the secondary and another cornerback, Derek Stingley on this list, checking in at number 8. Stingley was good last year when he played. Look, there were some growing pains. You think back to Denver last year when Cortland Sutton kind of had his way with Derek Stingley over the course of that game in Denver. But ultimately, when Stingley was on the field, he played pretty well. The tough part was Stingley had injury concern heading into his rookie year, and then he didn't finish his rookie year because of injury. So the big goal for Derek Stingley is play as many games as possible, hopefully 16 or 17 games over the course of this season, and then showcase some of that good play, showcase some of the improvement that Stingley's made and that players naturally make from year 1 to year 2, and then in DeMeco Ryans' system that should be more Derek Stingley friendly, take that jump, go to the next level as a cornerback, and Stingley has looked really good in the preseason. There were practices where quarterbacks weren't even throwing the ball towards him, and then I think back to the Dolphins practice where Tua Tagovailoa tested Derek Stingley on the first play of one-on-one drills, and he got Derek Stingley. It was a nice route by Tua's wide receiver. Stingley got, and the next thing you know, Derek Stingley basically didn't allow another completion the rest of the day. He was fantastic at different times in the preseason. And if he can carry that level of consistency onto the field, not only will he be a big-time contributor for this Texans team, but he'll be firing himself up this top 11 list over the course of the season. And I don't want to say that it's anywhere close to make or break, but when you think about the investment in Derek Stingley, going with him instead of Sauce Gardner, the success that Gardner has had to this point in the NFL, it would be really nice just from a soothing standpoint to have Derek Stingley play well in 2023 and to play all of 2023. And if he does that, which I believe he will, then he will be flying up this list, and he might even pass his teammate who's up next. This one's apropos, number 7 in your programs, number 7 on this list, and QB1 in your hearts, CJ Stroud, number 7 on this list. Now, again, I talked about how I came up with this list. The importance of the position plays in, how well they've played in the preseason, and the expectations and their potential all weigh into how I come up with this top 11. Well, the quarterback's the most important position on the team. CJ Stroud is QB1 for this team, and he played pretty well in the start of the preseason, and it got better and better and better and better and better to where he put a nice level and a nice total package of the preseason together, which gives him a nice starting point for the regular season. You want to see the accuracy, which he's displayed a ton. You want to see him continue to get deeper into the operation of the game, operation of the playbook, be able to call a bunch of the plays that offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick is going to want to play and be able to execute those. We've seen little bits of CJ Stroud. It hasn't been any long, extended CJ Stroud action. I'm interested to see in a game where CJ Stroud maybe starts slow, how does he bounce back? When he has a little dip in the middle of the game? Can he go up? Can he turn that game into the roller coaster? You start high, you go low, and then you go back up before everything is all said and done. That's what I'm excited about with C.J. Stroud. In addition to, it feels like a chance to have a franchise quarterback is certainly on that path. And if Stroud can go down that road, turn into the franchise quarterback, not just from the invested in, but from the plays like franchise quarterback standpoint, that's going to be huge for the Texans. And that'll get C.J. Stroud a little higher on this list. Now, I probably could have swapped C.J. Stroud with this next player just a little bit because QB is more important, but I'm leaning on the fact that this guy's going to be reliable. This guy's a veteran. He's done it at the highest level already, and I believe he has a chance to have one of the most impressive seasons that he has ever had in the NFL. And that's Dalton Schultz, the tight end for this team. Schultz comes over from the Cowboys. It was a surprise signing by Nick Caserio to go out there and get Dalton Schultz, and there was a hope for me that they would add a tight end in some way, shape, or form. I didn't expect that Dalton Schultz would become available or would factor into their plans, but ultimately the money was right, the opportunity was right, and Dalton Schultz is here. He had a fantastic 2021, over 800 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns with the Dallas Cowboys. And I believe Schultz has the opportunity to eclipse those numbers or at least replicate those numbers with the Houston Texans. He is reliable, he's steady, he gets open, and the way this offense uses tight ends, think about George Kittle in San Francisco. The way this offense uses tight ends, they are a priority in this offense. And you think about, you had Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and at different times Christian McCaffrey to focus on in San Francisco, and then Kittle's there. Well, you don't have the Samuels, the Ayuks, or even the McCaffreys, and Schultz is one of the most proven pass-catching commodities on this team when you factor in his talent, his age, and what he does for the Texans offense. The chances that Schultz has a big year are through the roof. I'm excited to see Dalton Schultz take the field, and again, I believe he could have one of the best seasons of his career, maybe the best season of his career, and that's why he is where he is on this list. Now, this one coming up on the list is very much about what this guy does for the team on the field and off the field. Jimmy Ward is the next on the list. He's 5th on the list here, the top 11 Houston Texans. And Ward is a leader. He's a captain for this team, and he brings the knowledge that this team needs, not only in the defense and in the scheme, but in putting together the expectation for what DeMeco Ryans wants from his defense. And it sort of takes that mentality and spreads it out across this team and spreads it out across this defense. And he's a tone setter. He's a tone setter from he's going to go out there and punish offensive players on the other team, and he's going to lead this team as evidenced not only by his captainship, but Jimmy Ward's done it all in the NFL. He's played really well. He struggled in his career and he bounced back. He's played for some really impressive coaches like Jim Harbaugh and Kyle Shanahan. He's played for some coaches that were a little bit in over their head in San Francisco, like Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly. He's been a slot guy. He's been only a safety. He's done a lot in his career, and in his early 30s, there's a lot left in the tank, in my opinion. He's coming off of the highest interception total of the season, and when you think about how the Texans may use him, interchanging with Jaylen Petri at that safety spot, you're going to get Jimmy Ward flying in there, helping in stopping the run. You're going to get Jimmy Ward back there patrolling, taking care of wide receivers and tight ends that are coming over the middle or going deep. And I'm excited to see what Jimmy Ward brings to the table. I don't know if this is going to last, and I'm putting Ward here in large part because he sets the tone for this team. I would think that maybe Ward goes down the list as the season progresses, not because he plays poorly, but just because players find themselves passing Ward up because of their impressive performances. We've got 4 players left here in the top 11. Appreciate everybody watching. I'd love a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out Houston Football in the description down below. It's where I do all my writing about the Houston Texans. And if you like fantasy football, my friends at Underdog Fantasy have a deal for you. When you sign up using my code in the description below, it's Stoots, Stoots. You're going to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That means if you put in $100, you're going to get to play with $200 at Underdog Fantasy. They've got weekly drafts. They've got the Pick'em, where you're just predicting higher or lower on players' stats, and you could 20 times your money in just 1 week, 1 weekend, 1 day with Underdog Fantasy. It's my favorite way to play fantasy, and the link in the description down below will get you that bonus. Appreciate you supporting the channel and supporting our fantastic sponsors. And if I've got this list all wrong, get in the comments and let me know. Your final 4 players in the top 11 spots here on the Houston Texans roster. Number 4, Damien Pierce, the running back for the Houston Texans. And I'd probably have Pierce 3 or 2 on this list if he had finished last season. It was an impressive year for Damien Pierce. He went from a 4th-round pick, a mid-round selection that was going to have to climb the depth chart, to quickly being the starting running back for this team. And then each and every week, he exhibited violence against opposing defenses. He looks for contact. He invites it. He wants to run guys over, and he was impressive in 2022. Now, Damien Pierce, he had never had that level of carries and touches as an offensive player in recent years, certainly not in his time at Florida, and you saw it. The injury bug popped up later in the year. Pierce didn't finish the season, but had he finished the season, he might have had one of the best rushing totals in all of football. His yards per game were 8th in football last year, and if you extrapolate that out, he finishes right around the top 8 in yards. Now you think about a more running back friendly offense, a better passing game, a defense that is going to keep the other team from scoring as many points, and so you don't have to abandon the run. And you factor all those things in with Devin Singletary to help extend the life of Damien Pierce in games, and the expectation and the hope for Damien Pierce is through the roof this season. He was impressive last year. He stands to be even more impressive this year. It's an exciting time to have a notable, trustworthy running back in this organization. I haven't been this excited about a running back since Arian Foster was the running back for this team, and that's high praise for Damien Pierce. High expectations for the second-year running back, and a high spot on this list. Number 3 on this list, a rookie. And you're saying to yourself, well, hold on, a rookie? That's right. A rookie is number 3 on my list. I have been so impressed with Will Anderson Jr. He has been fantastic in the preseason. He has made Sunday play against other professional athletes look like Saturdays in Tuscaloosa in November against some cupcake team that comes into play, the Crimson Tide. My goodness, has Will Anderson been impressive. The suddenness with which he moves and gets off the ball is impressive. I think back to a couple of the plays where he just had things scouted and realized what was going on. There was a couple of practice plays where the offense threw a screen, and he was the one that made the tackle after he realized it was a screen. That's right. He thought he was headed to the quarterback, realized it was a screen, and then went out and tackled the wide receiver. There was also another play in the preseason game against the Dolphins where Anderson realized there was going to be a screen by just reading the play. And he left his defensive end spot and ran out to the wide receiver. And ultimately the play didn't go that way, but the wide receiver would have been swallowed up by Will Anderson. Now, we talked about the speed and the anticipation, but the power is also there from Will Anderson. That's one of the things that he talks about with his game, that he likes to surprise people. Hey, I'm more powerful than they expect me to be, so I get him with the speed moves first, and then I hit him with the power. I'm very excited to see what Will Anderson puts together this season. He's the favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I believe he will be the Defensive Rookie of the Year. I don't believe double-digit sacks are out of the question for Will Anderson. And oh, by the way, this organization and this team needs Will Anderson to be really impressive on the defensive line. He is the player that possesses the most ability to be regularly disruptive when it comes to this defense. I'm excited to watch the rookie on the field. I'm excited for him to hopefully play well enough. The Texans fans don't even care about that investment that it took to go up there and draft Will Anderson with the number 3 overall pick. Number 2 on this list, a second-year player, Jaylen Petri. Petri is fantastic. I think back to last year where he was everywhere on this field, and I don't necessarily want a repeat of last year from Jaylen Petri. He was the only safety in the top 20 of tackles last year, okay? So of all the players in the league that were in the tops for tackles, he was the only safety in that list. I don't want that from Jaylen Petri again this year. I don't want him to have those opportunities. Petri got those opportunities because he ended up as the last line of defense for a really bad rush defense. Well, his teammates are going to be better in front of him. So the tackles will go down, but I'd like to see the tackles for a loss go up. Jaylen Petri is sort of turned into the guy that knifes through offensive lines and jumps in there for a tackle for a loss. His anticipation and play recognition is fantastic in that regard. And oh, by the way, he tied for second in the NFL in interceptions last year. So add to the interception total if you're Jaylen Petri. You clean up the tackling a little bit. It is very intriguing to see what Jaylen Petri can do, and you got to factor in the fact that Jimmy Ward's going to be there to impart whatever knowledge Ward has for him. He's got a teammate at the safety spot that he can trust. The front seven's better, and all those things combine to just continue to raise the potential and the level for Jaylen Petri. I believe he's already one of the best players in the 2022 NFL draft class. I would think that he further cements that he's one of the best players in the 2022 NFL draft class as this season goes on. The tackles for a loss are going to be fantastic, and I can't wait to see Jaylen Petri knifing in there and stuffing a running back short of the yard to gain, because that's what he has become known for. And there's an old saying that a buddy of mine, my former co-host on the radio, Brad Kellner, used to say about Petri at Baylor. Well, it felt like there were two Jaylen Petris on the field. Well, it felt that way at different times last year, and sometimes here in training camp in the preseason, it's looked like there were three Jaylen Petris on the field. He is everywhere, and that's why he is number 2 on this list. And number 1, I don't know that there was anybody that made more sense for this spot than this player. Laremy Tunsil is the number 1 player on the Houston Texans top 11 right now, and I don't know how he's going to get knocked off. Tunsil's the only player on this team that even has the conversation to be the best player at his position right now. Most people would tell you it's San Francisco 49ers left tackle Trent Williams. I tend to agree with them to an extent, but Tunsil certainly has the conversation locked up, in my opinion, for the second best left tackle in all of football. He is one of the best at his position, and he's compensated like that. He got the big contract extension, and he'll let you know it was the second time in history he was the most expensive and highest paid offensive lineman ever. And maybe he dips in for a third time in a couple of years, but I don't get the vibe listening to Laremy Tunsil talk and the approach that he's taken in the past year or so. I don't get the vibe that that's the most important thing to Laremy Tunsil anymore. You hear some of the conversations about how he took on the leadership role last year during the Brandon Cooks fiasco, where they stripped Cooks of the sea and Tunsil ended up as a captain in his place. And then you think about the ways that he has tried to connect with his teammates and lead them. And it felt like Tunsil said it was time for him to take on that part of the responsibility, that part of the role for this team. And he's also mentioned now he wants wins, and now he wants to chase a championship and get a ring. That's one of the things that he has left to accomplish in his career. That may not come this year or next year, but he's an integral part of putting together the base and the first couple of years of upward trajectory for this organization. He just really is impressive. He's playing the best football of his career right now. You think about some of the success he's had against elite pass rushers in the past couple of years. You think about last year when the Cleveland Browns were in town and they didn't want to put Myles Garrett over above Laremy Tunsil. They decided to put Myles Garrett over on Titus Howard because they felt like Tunsil would negate what Myles Garrett brought to the table, and that's a fun matchup. We'll get that matchup again this year, maybe, if the Browns want to put him over there on Laremy Tunsil. But he's one of the best at his position. He's the best player on this Texans team. And with Laremy Tunsil manning that left tackle spot, C.J. Stroud should feel very confident that his blind side is going to be well protected. Laremy Tunsil, number 1 on the Texans' top 11 players on the roster right now. Where did I go wrong? What did I mess up? Who did I leave off? What order did I get wrong? Let me know in the comments down below, and on your way to the comment section, thumbs up this video. Check out Houston Football, where I do all my writing about this team. www.houfootball.com. Appreciate you watching. I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon. The season's almost here. Plenty of fun stuff coming your way on the channel.